Okay, that was a false start. Let's start again. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this ITIL 4 webinar hosted by TOPdesk. This morning, we will give you an introduction of the updated version of ITIL. We'll make sure you have all the basic concepts, and we'll give you our vision and opinions on the matter. Before we get started, our colleague Sanne is available via the chat for any questions and remarks that you might have. And we'll try to make sure that we have some time left at the ending to go through any questions. And if we don't get to it, we'll make sure to have all your questions answered later on. A recording of this webinar will be made available to you after the webinar. You'll probably receive this tomorrow, so no need for extensive writing at this point. Let's first start with introductions. My name is Bas Blanke. I'm a service management consultant at TOPdesk, and I am involved in specific approaches and practices like Agile service management and ITIL.
Good morning, my name is Gunnar Oldenhoff, also a service management consultant at TOPdesk, and I'm involved at the framework like ITIL 4 as well, and also with supplier management and something like SIAM. What are we going to talk about today? Well, Axilos has released a new version of ITIL Foundation. So we'll just be discussing what did they actually release. So we're also going to cover some of the differences we recognize between the new and the previous version, of course. We're also sharing our thoughts on whether we think it's actually an improvement, and also what to expect after this current release. So, but first, what do we find within this new foundation release? First of all, a lot of concepts we are already familiar with from the previous version. So let's start with some of the key concepts. We recognize things like a service provider, service consumers, processes, outcomes, value, costs, concepts like that. But I think one of the concepts deserves some extra attention, because in ITIL 4, it's about working together with your colleagues, your partners, suppliers, of course, the customers. So we actually have moved on from delivering value to co-creating value, how they describe it. So what does it mean? Let me give you an example. Imagine a restaurant with a very nice atmosphere, nice decorations. We've got suppliers, they're delivering the best products, they're helping the chef create wonderful dishes. A team of waiters, they're ready to deliver incredible service. So basically the place is perfect, but what's the value in all of this without a guest enjoying it? So you see, to deliver services that actually have the wanted outcome, which is namely value for the customer, you need to work together. So this concept of co-creation, it's very important. So when we look at designing or delivering these services, ITIL 4 mentions that you should take into account the 4 dimensions of service management. These dimensions in ITIL, they're displayed in the 4 dimensions model. They represent a holistic approach to service management. So according to the new version, every service you design or deliver, it should take into account these 4 dimensions. And it is essential to achieve a balance of focus between each of these dimensions when you are delivering value through products and services. When you look at them, you might recognize the 4 P's of service management from the previous ITIL version. And they were people, product, partners, and process. But let me go quickly through these new 4 dimensions. So first one, organizations and people. It's something about the culture of an organization or the competency of the workforce. Secondly, the information and technology, which says something about the information being managed by the services you deliver, or information needed to deliver and support the services, and tooling helping you achieve that. The third one, partners and suppliers, something regarding working together with other parties. You could think of things like SLAs or even XLAs. And then value streams and processes. Basically what helps your organization transform input into output, and then as efficient and effective as possible, of course. So lastly, they also recognize external factors, which says something about the factors influencing service delivery, things like regulatory and political factors, which are basically outside your organization. And it's just something you should be aware of. So something less new, at least to some of us, is the ITIL Practitioner release of 2015. And we would like to ask you to join us in a poll. So we will try to get this poll launched, and hopefully you will see a question whether you are familiar with this question. And I see people already answering, so that's great. Let's just wait until see still people are voting, so let's wait a few more seconds so everybody can. All right, see a lot of people have voted, so thank you very much for that. Let's close this one. All right, so we see the great majority has either heard of it or has not heard of it. A small, I think 1/5 has read it. So why are we asking this question? Because the practitioner book offered 9 guiding principles of service management. And in this new release, they have merged it into 7 guiding principles you see on the screen right now. These principles are actually chosen quite well because they say something about how you should implement ITIL or ITSM for that matter. And if you have not read them, which is the majority of the listeners, I suggest you take some time to read more on them because, well, they actually help you implement ITSM. And for now, I would just like to highlight 3 of these principles. So first, progress iteratively with feedback. In this principle, it's easy to recognize an agile approach. So implementing improvements in small steps, even when you are dealing with a large project, it helps to create efficiency in your work. Also be sure to evaluate your work during the progress and adapt when necessary. So you will be flexible with the solutions you deliver. Second one is think and work holistically. Don't think of your IT department or organization as an island, because you are not working within a silo, you're working within a broader organization. So rather see IT as a part of a network of various parties who collaborate to provide value for your customers. And this could be internal departments, of course, but also your suppliers and of course your customers. And the third one I'd like to mention is keep it simple and practical, because we recognize lean principles in this one. It suggests to keep your work and the processes you have as simple as possible. So steps that don't add any value in some way. So besides these principles, the publication offers new models as well. And 2 are called the service value system and the service value chain. Let me go further with that. So this is the service value chain. This is a new model. It's part of a larger system called the service value system. And this describes all the factors that impact this service value chain you see right now. And you can think of things like governance, the guiding principles we just mentioned, and things like continual improvement. When we look at this service value chain, you see an overview of all activities you can do to respond to demand. and to provide value. So you see it on the left and right side of the model. So these activities are plan, improve, engage, design and transition, obtain, build, and deliver and support. So plan says something about a shared understanding. So the organization is moving the same way. Improve, well, probably familiar to everybody, but says something about continual improvement. We mentioned it earlier on. Engage is something on how you engage with your stakeholders. So not just the service desk that answers a call, but also understanding stakeholder needs. Design and transition says something about meeting expectations like quality and costs and speed. Then we have obtain and build. It says something about making sure the solutions are created. And we have deliver and support. So every service that is being delivered needs to be supported as well. So you don't need to perform all these activities for every service delivery. There's no fixed order for performing these activities. So for instance, for a bug fix, you'll probably perform other activities than when you are replacing your server farm, for instance. And another important thing is that all these activities, they provide input to each other. So for example, you have engage that provides user feedback to improve, or maybe design and transition, setting requirements and specifications for obtain and build. Let me show you how this service value chain works by an example. All right, so for instance, there is a customer and it's not able to use its email client just at the point when an important email has to be sent. So there's a clear demand within the organization, and the service desk is contacted, and they register the incident and notify the customer about the priority and the resolution time. So that's the engage activity. So this incident is escalated to the Exchange service team, and they identify that the service memory is maxed out. So we have a delivery and actually a support activity there. They decide to expand the memory via standard change and basically preventing further incidents as well. So now we have an improvement step, and eventually the service desk will check with the customer if the issue has actually been resolved. So we go back to engage again. Eventually we'll be doing this to create value, of course. So the email is working again, so the customer can proceed with whatever they were working on. And lastly, we could see something like this. Engage again, because we would like to know what the customer thinks about the resolution of this incident to try to improve our service delivery. So what we see is that we clearly see that it's not all activities are needed in a fixed order for that matter. But let me show you a second example to see how something like a change would go through this service value chain. So again, the service value chain, of course. But this situation, you might have a department like sales. They're using an old CRM solution, which basically isn't supportive anymore. So there we have demand. Then there might be a business relationship manager who is engaging with sales about their current demand. So it's not actually sales reaching out to IT, but it's rather IT being engaged with sales. Then we go to create a possible solution. Maybe costs and risks are evaluated. So we might see a request for change being planned. When we have a request for change, we might go back to stakeholders about a go or no go on the proposal. So keep them involved. So we will probably be planning a project to create the required solution, and all the people required are involved as well. mainly a development team probably will be involved in building this new solution and probably delivering some sort of minimal viable product. And then we see something interesting, not just because of these arrows, but mainly because we could see an agile way of working here, where via engagement feedback is being obtained about the new product. It's being given back to design and transition. Development team then goes on and trying to implement these improvements. So the improve activity as well. So we're continuously improving the service or product we are delivering. All because we want to deliver value, of course. So the new CRM solution probably will help sales better in achieving their goals. Eventually, we'll try to keep on improving the product we deliver. So we have this continual improvement again. We see this continual improvement within ITIL on multiple levels. We already recognized it in ITIL 2, by the way. And there you can recognize this model. So it was there in ITIL version 3 as well, and it's still here in ITIL version 4, with the small difference that the step has been added. If we look at the second last step, you see take action, which is new. Probably not that strange to be taking action on everything we plan, but somehow it has only been added in this release. So when we look at improvement, we also find it in the service value chain, as we just shown, as an activity. And lastly, the publication, it mentions the continual improvement practice. And well, practices, they are sort of the new processes of ITIL. I think most of the process you know from ITIL version 3, such as incident management, level management, capacity management, availability management, they are all still present. They're still things you should do as an IT department. So they, up till now at least, they haven't changed that much. What has changed though is that the 26 processes we had, they are now called practices, and there are 34. So we have more practices, and there are still processes, but they do not describe them that way. So why are they practices? Well, it's because ITIL 4 is not only describing a process flow, but also other factors that are important for the success of such a process. So what skills does your team need, how to cooperate with suppliers, which technology will help you reach your goal. So we'll probably be recognizing the 4 dimensions at this moment. So these 3 sorts of practices. We see general management practices, and they are practices that apply to business domains within an organization. So they are not specifically for service management. We see things like knowledge management and project management. You could see that basically everywhere. Secondly, we have the service management practices. So clearly they're specifically for service management. There we recognize the processes more, like incident management, problem management, change control, things like that. And lastly, we have technical management, and we recognize something like software development and management. So it's kind of a reach out to things like DevOps. So I think that that's enough about the content of this ITIL release. So let us share our thoughts on what makes this release an update. I think Bas will go on further with that. Let me just switch audio.
Thank you, Gunnar. Please keep in mind, if you have any questions in between, drop them in the chat, and we'll see if we can go through those questions at the end. So regarding ITIL 4, it has been released as an update to ITIL version 3, but what actually makes this edition an update? There are 3 things that I would like to discuss here. We see a movement from control to guidance, where ITIL version 3 was mainly about controlling your work and controlling your infrastructure, it was basically the more predictable it would get, the better it will be. That's where ITIL 4 does not really prescribe exactly which steps to take. The focus is more on working with the guiding principles in mind to actually get to the end result of providing value to your customer. So they're more towards guiding than controlling your process. ITIL 4 also brings a bigger focus on people. In ITIL version 3, we had process descriptions. It didn't really say much about the people who actually deliver those services or the customers receiving them. They had a sort of a passive role in the process. In ITIL 4, we see an increased focus on the human aspect of service delivery. There's a strong focus on customer value and co-creating this value with the customer and with other partners. ITIL 4 Foundation already hints here and there to how to approach your service staff, but not yet too extensively. Lastly, ITIL 4 has a scope that now also includes partners and suppliers in the ITSM story. It uses an holistic approach to look at the ITSM as a whole. ITIL version 3 had one process to actually deal with suppliers called supplier management, and that was mainly about contract management regarding those suppliers. In the meantime, we see more outsourcing of services happening at a lot of different organizations. So in that sense, good collaboration is essential to actually work with those suppliers to deliver the best value in services to your customers. If we look at these differences, a question that we get a lot is ITIL 4 actually an improvement? Was the time spent on writing this new updated version actually worth it? There are a couple of things I want to share with you around that. First point is the practices. At first glance, just naming the ITIL version 3 processes, practices in ITIL 4 just seems like a superficial change to the situation. But actually it isn't. In our experience, organizations tend to focus a lot or maybe too much on the process itself, whereas the focus is really lie in how does our process work, how does actually every step look like. But as ITIL 4 also mentioned, is all 4 dimensions of service management are equally relevant. So not only the process, but also the people, the partners, and the tools that we use to deliver that services are equally relevant. So looking at the processes like a practice actually gives a broader view on service management, and that's an improvement to the situation that we knew before. What ITIL 4 also tries to do is to incorporate concepts from other approaches. For example, the iterative approach to developing services, something that we learned from Agile, and is really something that ITIL 4 tries to create a space for. And also the holistic approach to service management, so involving the partners and working together with them in creating services is really a lesson learned from DevOps, for example. And that's also a step beyond ITIL version 3. When we look at ITIL 4, what it still lacks actually is an answer to the enterprise service management approach. It's still very much an IT approach to service management. Of course, it mentions the role of other departments as partners, but it doesn't go too much in depth on how to work with them. Or if we look at working together with suppliers, it does not really provide answers on how to actually do that. So if that's currently a challenge for you, you might look into approaches like SIAM, for example. If you read through ITIL Foundation, you come across a lot of different buzzwords. We've also mentioned them in this presentation. We have words like value, partnership, co-creation, iterations. And it's really a lot of the time, it's still really about those buzzwords and not much beyond that. In that sense, Foundation is really a foundation of ITIL 4, but still lacks some depth on how to do this. Having said that, ITIL Foundation is the first step of ITIL 4. We have something to expect in the future. Axelos has published the following schedule, as you see here, and this shows the publications that will follow in the second half of 2019. It's not entirely clear yet what will be in those publications. We do have some hopes and expectations around that. We hope they follow the trend that they currently started. ITIL 4 Foundation is a good first step, and it really already starts to work on some improvements based on the compared to older versions. We hope to see some more detail about combining different approaches, like, for example, Agile and ITIL. We see organizations with a challenge like an IT support organization with strict SLAs, working together with a back office with development teams, working with Agile systems and Agile ways of prioritizing work. Specific challenges like that we hope to see answered in future publications. We'll also see more enterprise service management related material, how to work with different departments as an IT organization. And lastly, we hope to see more renewed approach to the practices. As we've seen, the existing practices are still there in ITIL 4, but how would change management look like in 2019? Is it still the change management that we knew, or is it a more agile, more flexible approach? Finishing up, the last part of our story. I don't think we have any time to go through the questions right now. Some people probably have a new appointment in their calendar, but we'll make sure to look through all the questions that you sent to have them answered to you later in the following week. But in terms of takeaways, keep the following in mind about ITIL 4. It's all about creating value. The reason IT exists is creating value for the organization, for the customers. And the way we do that in ITIL 4 is no longer IT by itself, but it's a matter of co-creating value. So work together with the customer and work together with partners inside and outside your organization to bring this value to the customer. And if you start doing this, or if you start improving this, keep it simple and practical. Look at your organization, see where you are in terms of maturity, and start improving it step by step in a simple and practical way. As I said at the start of this presentation, a recording will be made available to you, and the slides will be sent to you in a link tomorrow. If you're interested in this type of content, in blogs and webinars like this, make sure you subscribe on blog.topdesk.com. We're continuously trying to produce new material, to write articles, to provide knowledge and our views on the matters to you. So make sure to do that. To close off, we thank you for your time and attention this morning, and we'll hope to see you again in the future.